Hello. Good afternoon, and welcome to the Beyond the Studio podcast, sir. I'm Deeptanshu. Today we have with us Dr. Rutul Joshi. He is a urban planner, a researcher, and an educator at CEPT University. His work sits at the intersection of thinking about cities, and he has a lot of practice in transit-oriented development and sustainable mobility. He's also authored a handbook on local area planning for transit-oriented planning in Indian cities. So I would like to just start off with a basic question about urban planning. Coming from a urban planning background, could you brief the general mass about what the major domains of urban planning are?
So, the way in which we understand urban planning in CEPT University and otherwise is that urban planning is basically, if we sort of divide the city in two parts, one is the private realm, which is the private plot of land, that's where people make their buildings, and everything outside that private realm is a public realm. Okay, so public land, public roads, public resources, gardens, our larger environment, all of that. And if there is a discipline which has to become a sort of a custodian of that public realm, or also a discipline which thinks about enhancing, strengthening that public realm, that is how I look at urban planning. And I see it as a discipline which also try to solve problems of urban public realm. So it's not only about understanding and documenting the public realm, but it's also about a discipline which would proactively try and solve the problems that face our city. That's how I look at what urban planning is.
Okay. So today's conversation, we would like to go a little more specific to your work. So we are mainly going to concentrate on transit-oriented development. My first question to you is, could you briefly explain what transit-oriented development actually means? And it's a term we hear a lot in planning and in policy conversations. But what does transit-oriented development look like in practice?
Right. I think that's a great question. So for me, transit-oriented development should be part of a transit-oriented city. So I see transit-oriented city as the final objective, where transit-oriented development planning is a way of achieving that. Now, what is a transit-oriented city? You get up to get out of your house at a 5 to 10 minutes of walking distance. You will reach a transit network. We can be completely mode agnostic, whether it can be a rail-based system or a bus-based system, but that would be a system which would make you reach anywhere you would like to go in the city. Maybe in half an hour, 45 minutes, you will be able to cover the entire city. That city will be walkable. It will have lot of green shaded footpaths, and it would be a city where you will not need a private vehicle, whether it's a two-wheeler or a four-wheeler. And can we imagine a city like that? And there are a lot of cities in the world which come close to being a city like that. That's what I call a transit oriented city. And that's why we need to plan our overall city, our area, our neighborhood, our buildings, and our transit system to be more commuter friendly, if you like. A city where commuters feel at home and everybody in majority is a commuter. There are parts of Mumbai like this where it is completely ruled by commuters, and commuters sort of occupy land, they crowd up and then they go away, that sort of a thing, and they become sort of the lifeline or the heartbeat of the city. That is what a transit oriented city is for me, and transit oriented development is a means to achieve that.
Okay, so you did shed a light on what the basic importance of transit-oriented development is. But then why do Indian cities require this concept? I mean, if I could just go everywhere in a personal vehicle, in the comfort of a AC, in comfort of like leg room, okay, why would I want to travel in public transport with a huge crowd?
Right. So, let me answer this question in two levels. One is a philosophical level and one is a sort of practical level. The practical level is, first to start with, is that what we often don't understand is that moment you buy cars or private vehicles, and if you want to design a system which is dominated by private vehicles and cars especially, we have done that in this world in last 100 years. And a lot of North American cities are example of cities where the cars dominate the landscape of the city. And you get a particular kind of geography, a geography where you have to invest a lot in transit infrastructure. You will create a series of flyovers and expressways. You will basically live in a outside the city, very low density suburban area, and then commute at least for 1 or 2 hours every day to come to the city center where all the jobs are, where you have the high-rise towers. A lot of American cities are built around the assumption that everybody will drive a car, and everybody will be driving actually at a pretty high speed, 40 or 50 kilometers per hour. And you get a city like that. It is tied with a geography. In last 100 years, those geographies are created. Okay, and when we look at those cities, those cities might have a charm for some time, but in India, where most of the people don't drive cars, where we are already struggling with road fatalities, air pollution, traffic congestion, and moreover our cities which are naturally dense and diverse, do we want to destroy that city and turn that into a car-friendly geography, is a question that we need to seriously think about. Okay. Now, coming to the second aspect of practicalities, what if public transport gives you extra legroom, AC, and also a stress of not driving? We often underestimate stress of driving in Indian condition. So by the time you drive in a very comfortable car for 40 minutes, even listening to a podcast or something, and then by the time you arrive at the office, you're already exhausted. Versus, you sit in a public transport, and actually the university from where I did my PhD, they did a lot of research, that particular transport center did a lot of research on travel time use. How do people use their time in public transport? And there they will say that people will read books, talk to friends and relatives on phone, they will take a nap. I mean, isn't it fantastic to take a nap at 8:45 in the morning going to the office and reaching office absolutely fresh, and then wake up with a coffee in the office? So the point is that if public transport becomes comfortable, if it is supplied in a sort of great amount, then it will not only create a city but also population that is happy, that is less stressful, less anxious by the time they reach office. So I mean, it sounds like a fairy tale what I'm saying, but there are many cities which operate like this because they have massively invested in public transport, and a lot of cities realize that keep investing in cars is going to attract more cars, and we do not want to lock ourselves into that kind of lifestyle of keep driving the cars and sort of creating congestion, air pollution, possibly fatalities, etc. And that's why it's extremely important that we have a different vision for our cities. Okay, so that's a practical aspect. Philosophical aspect, little bit. See, cities are made because we all come together. Cities are agglomeration. People from diverse lifestyle and different communities, they all come together to make a city. When you have a large population coming together to make a city what it is, in that city we have to privilege public systems. Okay, so that's why, like, imagine if everybody dig up their own borewell, it will not be sustainable. Okay, so when we are arguing about public transport, it's basically an argument for favoring a public system. It won't be feasible for you to have a private swimming pool or a private garden in the city in every house. That's why we have shared gardens, shared swimming pool. We share a public transport system. Similarly, we share a solid waste collection system, and we also share a water supply system. So we have, the human necessity is that we come together to make a city at this point in time in our human evolution. And once you make a city, the only way in which you can solve the common problems is by strengthening the public systems. You can always have a private solution, but I am not sure how sustainable they will be.
Okay. So even though this seems all a little fancy in terms of what a city should function like, or how a city should function like. And if such a knowledge is already there in planners, so where are the Indian cities lacking, or where is the policy framework lacking, or why do I keep on seeing more flyovers being built in cities rather than let's say a bus system or a metro systems are still coming up, but let's say bus system or like a last mile first mile connectivity.
Yeah, I mean, very good question. The way in which I would think about it is that I think as per capita incomes are growing in India, we are every time in every 5 years or every 10 years, we are thrown upon a new kind of a challenge. You know, if I talk about the planners who are before my generations, their problem was that they make some very good plans, but there is no money with the government. There is a very low tax base. Nobody had money to actually implement a lot of those ideas. Now things do get implemented, and that's why we are at the right time to debate what kind of ideas which will get implemented. So our problem is not now knowledge or technology. Our problem now is to seeking the right kind of wisdom to do maybe something which is inconvenient in a short term, but it will have a great sort of benefit in the long term. I mean, look at some of the innovations. I wouldn't imagine 15, 20 years back that solar panels, I mean, there are residential society which are making money by installing solar panels. I mean, look at the way in which the technology has changed, backed up by the policy, backed up by, people's own initiative. So all of these things come together to solve problems in a way. And when you are trying to solve a problem in private realm, it's sort of slightly easier. Right, so adaptation of technologies is slightly easier if the firms and individuals have to do it. But what we need to do is to really strengthen our public systems, also in terms of thinking, right? So flyover is like making a shortcut, okay, rather than investing in the mobility network in the city. So, and when you have a lot of money, immediately you might take shorter decisions. But I think very soon, a lot of cities are realizing day by day that those flyovers get congested. Now what? Right? So rather than making the same mistake that the western cities have also made and then taken a U-turn, we can have an advantage of a knowledge leapfrog and say that, if we start building more sustainable system, it's going to reap us benefit much more quickly. And see, one thing is very, very clear, at least my knowledge of a lot of cities outside, there is no city in the world which has built its way out of congestion. Okay? Congestion stays, and the only way to deal with it is slowly enhance the public transport system. In the other day, I was giving an example in the class that if you compare a city which is from a more developed kind of a society, higher per capita income, in Ahmedabad, you will realize that Ahmedabad has about 1,000 buses, about 40, 50, 60 kilometer of network of metro. The same comparable city elsewhere has 8,000 buses, has 400 kilometer of network of metro, has public bike sharing system, has ferry system, has integrated ticketing, congestion charging, ultra low emission zone. Everything put together makes the city what it is. So in a way, we are on the right trajectory, but we have a long way to go. Many times I think of development in India as 2 steps forward, 1 step back, but I also see that as an important condition in a democratic society. Sometimes we have to make a mistake, but we should be sort of graceful enough to realize that it was a mistake and we must take a different policy direction.
Right. So one of the questions that TOD, one of the situations that arises because of TOD is that the land value often rises in the transit oriented zone, because you have factors like premium FSI coming in. And so when does TOD become more of a sustainable approach? Like, what is the limit of it becoming a sustainable approach rather than like a real estate driven strategy?
Yeah, so see, currently the way in which we are looking at TOD is limited in the sense that we are looking at corridors and we are looking at FAR based approach. Whereas the way in which the ideal way of looking at TOD is that your city's next development plan has to decide that what are the nodes do we develop and how do we connect them. Okay, and where FAR is going to be one of the two. But the original idea, the OG idea of TOD is walking friendly commuters district, which will go through diverse kind of nodes and network of the city, and it will connect the city. So in one node it will connect to a public park, in one node it will connect to very commercial area, in another node it will connect to a residential neighborhood, in third places it will connect to a university area. Now imagine if your network is enriched by this kind of connections, and where you are focusing on making those connections more commuter friendly. If that is the approach, right, rather than limited approach of FAR, I understand that liberalizing FAR is extremely important in our cities, because we do not want to sort of keep artificially low FAR even in the area which has a very high demand. But I don't see that we need to equate higher FAR with TOD everywhere. In certain areas, I mean, look at even in the current situation, even if we sort of look at the limited idea of FAR, the way in which FAR will get articulated in certain area versus other area is completely different, right? So the city is already taking its own decisions. Now we have to back it up with not looking at FAR as a one silver bullet which will create TOD, but focus on more urban design, focus on urban planning, focus on creative redevelopment, focus on connecting the city. That is what will make TOD sort of really work in our cities.
Okay, you did mention about a lot of foreign cities that have got the concept of TOD like spot on, or are still like developing on that concept. So one of those cities is Hong Kong. Again, I visited this city as part of the summer winter school. So what do you think that Hong Kong has done right, and what do you think that India should learn from Hong Kong?
So I think what Hong Kong has done right, we also have to understand the condition is that you have a sort of next level of land constraint, and sometimes innovation come out of that level of constraints. You can simply not build on the mountain, so you have limited land and you want to innovate in that. I think one important innovation I often talk about is that if you notice in Hong Kong, the metro stations are not like a static rectangular dabbas. Metro stations are integrated in the urban fabric completely. They've actually submerged into it fully, right? So I often talk about this in my TOD training program, that the MTR of Hong Kong, which is the transit agency, their symbol is an octopus. So I see their metro station as an octopus which is just submerged into, extended its fangs into all the area completely. So one is that they've got that right. They have integrated the station accessibility with the adjoining buildings. The second thing is what they've got it right is the interconnection between the buildings. I have not seen a city where you are connected above the ground, on the ground, below the ground, at multiple level. You have truly public buildings and you can go from one building passing on to the other building. So that is something that they've got right. And the third thing is that they are not scared of heights.
Right.
So there are really very tall buildings, and that really reflect the demand. At the same time, they have created pocket gardens wherever they could find, green spaces, etc. And I recently, this time in Hong Kong, we visited the M Plus Museum. They've also created some very nice art and cultural district, all integrated with the transit, right? So I won't say that it's a perfect city, but given the constraint that they have created a very nice sort of environment. I would say that Hong Kong is that one of those transit friendly city or transit oriented city where where you would think that commuter is a king and not necessarily a car driver would feel the same way in the city.
Okay. One of the things that I observed this weekend was I was watching a YouTube video, and on that there was this commercial in which the protagonist, he says that I'm very tired because I've just come via bus transport to this restaurant, and he's talking to his friend. So his friend is like, I'm not this middle class person. I have come via cab, and that's why I don't look tired. But then that made me think about why is there a perception that coming via public transport is something what a middle class person would do, or someone who's a low income group would take up. Like even metros and all is seem people see it as a not for their category of income. So how do you think that transit should change, like the perception of people should change with transit?
So see, I think perception in India changes oftentimes with better supply. Okay, so I believe that if you have more supply of public transport, more quality of public transport, reliability, accessibility, if it is offered, then the perception will change very, very quickly. So I don't see it using public transport versus cab right now as a class problem. Right now it's a infrastructure deficit problem.
Okay.
Right. So if you have money, you're going to get over you are going to buy your way out of infrastructure deficit. Okay. Whereas it was a class issue, let's say in the UK, when their prime minister said that if you are in 26 and riding a bus, then you must be a failure. But that was 80s in the UK, right? You could sort of talk about the class issue then there, but even in those cities now, using public transport has become a sort of a right thing to do. So I would say that this kind of perception issues will change. But I think what we are really fighting in India for is increasing the quality of public infrastructure.
Right.
Yeah, and it will change everything. I mean, the other day, for example, I saw somebody holding a birthday party in a public garden of 10-year-old, and all they did is they put brick on two sides, and they asked them to play the football match, and then they cut the cake in the public garden. Now, it was a good garden. There was enough space, and somebody innovatively thought that rather than buying an expensive restaurant and doing this, kids really had fun. Right? So if you have a good public infrastructure, people will change their behavior very quickly.
Okay.
And I think that is something that we have to really scale up.